Hello everyone and welcome back to Pulseline Report. I'm your host, and today, we have some important updates from around the globe. From major protests to shifting political tides in Europe, and the latest from the ongoing geopolitical struggles, there's plenty to dive into. So, grab a seat and let's break it all down. Today we're starting off with some serious news coming out of Romania. As many of you may have heard, there have been massive protests in Bucharest, and it's not just in the capital, other cities across Romania are seeing action as well. The people of Romania are taking to the streets to protest the cancellation of elections and the denial of a fair democratic process. It's not just about politics, it's about the freedom to have a say in the future of their country. Romania is in the spotlight after tens of thousands of people took to the streets to protest against the cancellation of elections and the refusal to hold a second round of voting. In Bucharest, Victory Square was filled with people demanding transparency and respect for the democratic process. The protests quickly spread to other cities, such as Cluj-Napoca, Timisoara, and Iasi, signaling that the entire country is affected by this situation. At the center of the controversy is Klaus Iohannis, who remains the country's president even though the electoral process was blocked before a final vote could be organized. Romanians are outraged by what they perceive as a blow to democracy, and many have compared the situation to what happened in Ukraine, where foreign policy massively influenced domestic politics. A crucial detail worth noting is the authenticity of these protests. Unlike other social movements in Europe, these protests were not marked by EU flags or other external symbols. This is a purely Romanian fight for democratic rights, and this should catch the attention of leaders around the world. But it's not just Romania in the spotlight. There are changes brewing across Europe. In countries like Croatia, where Milanovic just secured a second presidential term with overwhelming support, the mood is shifting. His anti-escalation stance with Russia resonates with many, and he's clear that Croatia is not at war with Russia, unlike Germany or other parts of the EU. He even took a stand against sending military aid to Ukraine, emphasizing that Croatia's stance on this conflict is one of neutrality and peace. In other developments, we're seeing a shift in how Europe views this wave of change doesn't stop here. In Hungary, Viktor Orban continues to be a strong voice against external influence in Europe, and other countries such as Austria and the Czech Republic might follow a similar path. If these changes persist, the European Union could be forced to rethink its strategy and adjust its political priorities. Could this lead to a resurgence of power for more populist pro-sovereignty leaders? Time will tell. Across the globe, tensions are also rising. In Belgrade, Serbia, there were protests led by students calling for accountability after a tragic incident at a train station in Novi Sad. The government's response to the tragedy has been under scrutiny, and the protesters are demanding justice. What's crucial here is that these protests also appear to be organic, with clear signs that this isn't an external attempt to manipulate the message. Another major topic catching attention is the attempted attack on the Turk Stream pipeline, a vital route for natural gas delivery from Russia to Europe. According to Russia's Ministry of Defense, 8 Ukrainian drones were involved in an attack in the Kadar region, but air defense systems successfully repelled the threat. Why is this attack significant? Because it highlights an alarming trend: the destruction of essential energy infrastructure for Europe. These sabotage attempts only exacerbate the existing energy crisis, forcing European states to depend on liquefied natural gas imported from the United States, much more expensive and harder to obtain. With the energy crisis still looming large over Europe, these attempts to destabilize the pipeline could drive up energy prices even further, making life harder for European nations already struggling with inflation and the ongoing war. As tensions rise, we're also seeing mixed signals from the US about how to handle the situation in Ukraine. Mike Waltz, a key figure in US security, suggested that the Trump administration is grappling with the reality of Russia's dominance in the region. According to him, the idea that Ukraine could win back its lost territories seems increasingly unlikely, and a shift towards diplomatic negotiations might be the only way forward. But there's also a lot of internal conflict within the US about how to approach Russia and the ongoing war in Ukraine. Mixed messages from key players like Waltz show that the Trump administration is still figuring out its approach to these challenges. The political landscape in the US is also heating up, as Trudeau has warned about retaliatory tariffs if the Trump administration places 25% tariffs on Canadian goods. This could spark a trade war that would raise costs for both countries, particularly in the energy sector. If tensions escalate, we could see the US struggling to meet its own energy needs while the European Union faces even worse challenges securing energy resources. And speaking of energy, there's a major development in Germany, where some politicians are finally waking up to the reality of how the conflict in Ukraine has harmed the German economy. With energy prices soaring and German industry suffering, there's growing support for ending the sanctions on Russia and bringing Nord Stream 2 back online. It seems like the globalist narrative is slowly being dismantled piece by piece. The ongoing situation in Ukraine has pushed European countries to reconsider their stance, and the protests in Romania and Serbia reflect that shift. People are starting to understand the economic damage caused by the war and the global power struggles that underlie it. This has been today's episode of Pulseline Report. The world is going through a period of dramatic changes, and we are here to keep you updated on the most important events. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Drop us a comment below. What do you think about the protests in Romania, the political transformations in Europe, or the escalation of trade tensions? We'll see you next time. Until then, stay informed and take care. Title Pulseline Report, on-screen text, background news studio.